Hey everybody, Chris Serino here from Sultana Education Foundation's virtual classroom. One of the questions I get the most from teachers who are teaching about Native Americans of this region is which tribal groups lived here? I've got materials about the Iroquois and the Cherokee, but nothing about the Chesapeake Bay region. So what I'm going to be doing today is walking you through probably the best primary source we have that addresses that subject, John Smith's 1612 map of the Chesapeake Bay. So first of all, most of the Native Americans that were living on the bay were Algonquin speakers. So they had some cultural and linguistic similarities. I'm going to start here. This is the eastern shore, because remember Smith's map is oriented with north to the right, so this is the east. So this is the lower Delmarva Peninsula. We have the Accomack tribe down here. Just north of them we have the Accohanics. Here Smith labels this tribal group the Waikakamaco, which today we would call the Pocomoke. And then the largest group that he labels on the lower eastern shore are the Kaskarawaks, and today we would call those the Nanacoke Indians. So moving to the upper eastern shore and the head of the Chesapeake Bay, something really interesting happened during Smith's voyages. He met the Takwa Indians, which he shows here on the Sassafras River, and this was the first group whose language he did not recognize. So it's possible that the Takwa were speaking some form of Lenape dialect, and today the Lenape Indians are located just inside the Delaware state line. And then at the head of the bay, he's got the Susquehannocks, which today we would shorten and just say the Susquehannock Indians. They were controlling the Susquehanna River as it fed into the Chesapeake. And then this is kind of interesting. There's this giant swath of unpopulated territory right here. And we think this is because of this mysterious tribe that Smith shows way up here that he called the Massawomics. Evidently this group was raiding down these river systems. So the Native Americans here just fled to the other side of the bay. It's also important to note that the Susquehannocks were speaking another language that Smith didn't recognize. It's possible they were speaking a form of the Iroquoian dialect. Perhaps the most influential Native American tribal leader as it related to the Jamestown settlers was Powhatan. And if you look on the map, you can see this word spelled out over a great expanse of land here. Powhatan. Powhatan had his headquarters on the upper James River and later at Werowocomoco on the today's York River. And he had established a confederation of several dozen Native American groups here. He had varying levels of influence over all these people, but to the English, it was perceived that he basically was kind of in charge of this whole area. That's why you see this word here. Within this area, you also have groups today we would say the Piscataway Indians lived here. This is the Patuxents. Of course, you have the Potomac, or back then Patawomic tribe here, and the Rappahannock Indians would have lived here on the Rappahannock River. Lastly, on Smith's note, he denotes two tribal groups living in the mountains of the western portions of Virginia. He's got the Monacan Indians up here at the head of the James, and the Manahoke Indians up here way above the head of the Rappahannock River. And these also were tribes that were speaking another language that was unrecognizable to Smith. So it's possible these natives were speaking a Siouan dialect. It's important to remember that Smith didn't hit every single river system in the bay, so he missed a lot of villages, and the list that I just gave you was not a comprehensive list. He certainly missed several tribal groups. And here's one great example. Here's the Choptank River. This is a map from 1673 made by a guy named Augustine Herman. He shows Indian towns here, and this is the Choptank tribe, which had a very large reservation right here, about in the area where present-day Cambridge, Maryland now stands. So to wrap up, at the point of first settlement, when the Jamestown colony was established, there was a wide range of Native American groups living in the region. The Powhatan Confederacy kind of dominated this part of southwestern Virginia. On the lower shore, you have the Accomacks, the Accohanics, the Waikakamaco, who today we would call Pocomokes, the Kaskarawaks, who today we'd call the Nanacokes, the Takwa, which may have been closely related to the Lenape, the Susquehannocks, and then up here in the mountains, the Monacans and the Manahokes. You had a variety of linguistic groups. These perhaps were speaking a Siouan dialect. Most of these tribal groups were speaking a form of Algonquin. We think the Susquehannocks may have been speaking a form of the Iroquoian language, and then there may have been a Lenape dialect down in this area. So a lot going on here on the Chesapeake Bay. That's it for today's lesson. For for Sultana Education Foundation's Virtual Classroom.